What is the purpose of the law? From the ancient codes that governed early civilizations to the modern systems shaping our societies, law has been humanity's attempt to create order, ensure justice, and promote the common good. But laws often walk a fine line between liberation and restriction. Are they tools for human flourishing, or do they risk becoming rigid frameworks that stifle the very values they aim to uphold? Jesus offers us a remarkable perspective on the law, not as a lifeless set of rules but as a living framework designed to reflect love and justice. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them but to fulfill them, he said in the Sermon on the Mount. This statement challenges us to reconsider what it means to fulfill the law. Is it about strict adherence to every rule, or something deeper, more transformative? Jesus' teachings show us that engagement with the law requires more than surface-level compliance. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, he declared, reframing a long-standing tradition and reminding his followers that laws exist to serve humanity, not to burden it. His insights invite us to ask difficult questions. How do we engage with laws to ensure they uplift rather than constrain? How do we honor the spirit of the law in a way that promotes love and justice? When questioned about the greatest commandment, Jesus' response simplified and elevated the law's purpose. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. In this profound statement, he reveals the heart of the law, love, both divine and communal. Through his life and ministry, Jesus demonstrated that the law is not static but dynamic. It invites engagement, inspires innovation, and demands a voice for justice. These three principles, engagement, innovation, and voice, are the keys to understanding how Jesus fulfilled the law and how we might approach systems of guidance today. Each principle holds lessons for how we can live in ways that honor both the letter and the spirit of the law. Let's begin with engagement, exploring what it means to interact deeply and meaningfully with the laws that shape our lives. Engagement with the law begins with a simple but profound question. What is it for? Too often, laws are treated as fixed and absolute, meant to be obeyed without question. But Jesus challenged this notion, teaching that the law is not an end in itself, but a means to a greater purpose. He showed us that true engagement with the law requires thoughtfulness, curiosity, and a commitment to justice. Take, for example, his response to the Pharisees when they criticized his disciples for picking grain on the Sabbath. Jesus reframed their rigid interpretation, declaring, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." In this single statement, he turned the conversation on its head. The law was not created to impose burdens or limit humanity, but to serve its flourishing. It was a reminder that engaging with the law requires understanding its intent rather than blindly adhering to its form. This approach is echoed in Jesus' teaching on the greatest commandment. When asked to name the most important law, he replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind." This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Here, Jesus distilled the entire legal tradition into its core purpose, love. Engagement with the law, then, is not about memorizing rules, but about living out their spirit, about bringing love into our relationships with God and one another. But engagement also requires action. Jesus' fulfillment of the law was not passive, it was deeply participatory. His life was a constant demonstration of how to embody the law's principles in real, tangible ways. He healed on the Sabbath, dined with sinners, and defended the vulnerable, all acts that challenged the status quo while remaining true to the law's ultimate purpose. For us, engagement with the law might mean asking hard questions about the systems we live under. Are they promoting justice? Are they aligned with the values they claim to uphold? Are they serving the people they're meant to protect? Jesus modeled this kind of active engagement, urging us to look beyond mere words on a page to the principles they represent. When we engage with the law as Jesus did, we embrace it as a living framework, one that requires our thoughtfulness, our participation, and our courage. This is the first step in fulfilling the law's purpose, not simply following it, but interacting with it, questioning it, and reshaping it to ensure it reflects the values of love, justice, and human dignity. With engagement as our foundation, we can turn to the next principle, innovation. How do we take the eternal truths of the law and adapt them to meet the needs of a changing world? If engagement with the law calls us to wrestle with its meaning and purpose, innovation challenges us to ask an equally vital question: how can the law grow? For some, the idea of altering or adapting the law might seem dangerous, even sacrilegious. Yet Jesus showed us that true faithfulness to the law includes the courage to refine and reimagine it, ensuring it serves its divine purpose in every era. In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus famously began a series of teachings with the words, "You have heard that it was said, but I tell you." Here, he took familiar commandments, prohibitions against murder, adultery, and false vows, and expanded their meaning. To Jesus, the law was not merely about outward behavior, but the inner condition of the heart. Anger, lust, and dishonesty, he taught, were just as destructive as the acts they preceded. Through this radical reinterpretation, Jesus didn't dismiss the law, he deepened it, showing how its eternal truths could challenge and transform us. This spirit of innovation is evident again in the new command he gave to his disciples: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. At first glance, this command might seem redundant, echoing the call to love one's neighbor. But Jesus takes it further, offering himself as the standard of love. This is not just a command to be kind or compassionate, it is a call to sacrificial, transformative love. By introducing this deeper dimension, Jesus revealed that even the most fundamental principles of the law can be enriched and renewed. Innovation within the law, however, is not about abandoning tradition. Rather, it is about preserving its essence while adapting its application. When Jesus declared, "If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent," he was quoting scripture to confront the rigid legalism of his day. The law, he reminded his audience, was always meant to prioritize mercy and compassion over ritual and appearance. For us, this principle of innovation has profound implications. It invites us to examine the laws and systems in our own lives and ask, are they truly serving their purpose? Are they addressing the needs of today's world? Are they aligned with the core values they were created to uphold? Innovation demands creativity, humility, and a willingness to change. It asks us to adapt timeless truths to meet the challenges of our time, just as Jesus did. When we embrace innovation, we honor the law's eternal purpose while ensuring its relevance for future generations. This balance between tradition and transformation is at the heart of Jesus' teachings, and it leads us to the third principal voice. How do we ensure the law serves justice and uplifts the vulnerable? How do we use our voices to call out when it falls short of its intent? The law, at its best, exists to protect and uplift. Yet laws are made and enforced by human hands, and history shows us how easily they can be misapplied or twisted to serve power rather than justice. In such moments, the law needs a voice that calls it back to its original purpose, that advocates for the vulnerable, and that challenges those who misuse it. Jesus embodied this principle, using his voice to speak truth to power and to defend those the law had failed to protect. Consider his encounter with the woman accused of adultery. The law was clear, her offense was punishable by death. Yet when her accusers demanded Jesus' judgment, he responded not with condemnation, but with a challenge. "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." One by one, the crowd dispersed, and Jesus told the woman, "Go now and leave your life of sin." In this moment, Jesus gave voice to mercy and justice, refusing to let the law be wielded as a weapon of destruction. This same courage is evident in his harshest words for the Pharisees and teachers of the law. "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness." Jesus exposed the hypocrisy of those who used legal precision to mask their failure to uphold the law's greater purpose. His voice cut through their rituals to remind them that the law's heart is justice. The power of voice lies in its ability to confront injustice and call for change. Jesus modeled this not only in his words but in his actions. He touched lepers, healed on the Sabbath, and ate with tax collectors and sinners, each act a declaration that the law exists for human dignity, not exclusion. By using his voice, he gave dignity to the voiceless and challenged systems that had lost their way. Today, the principle of voice calls us to the same work. It challenges us to speak up when laws are misused or when systems fail those they are meant to protect. It invites us to amplify the voices of the marginalized and to call for justice in the face of inequity. Whether we are students questioning outdated rules, citizens advocating for policy reform, or leaders shaping institutions, we are reminded that silence is complicity. Voice, then, is the culmination of engagement and innovation. It ensures that our participation and creativity are grounded in justice and compassion. As Jesus demonstrated, the law cannot fulfill its purpose without those willing to speak and act in its defense. And so the triad is complete engagement, innovation, and voice. Together, these principles reveal the depth and dynamism of Jesus' teachings on the law. They show us how to approach laws, divine or human, not as rigid constraints, but as living frameworks for love, justice, and human flourishing. The law is not merely a framework of rules. It is a mirror, revealing the values we claim to uphold and exposing the gaps between those values and our actions. Jesus didn't just call for engagement, innovation, and voice as helpful tools. He demanded them as necessities for justice, love, and human flourishing. And his warnings remain as piercing today as they were 2,000 years ago. If we fail to engage with the systems that govern our lives, if we choose ignorance or indifference, we become complicit in their failings. If we refuse to innovate, clinging to tradition without questioning its alignment with justice, we risk burying the spirit of the law beneath the weight of its letter. If we silence our voices or worse, use them to defend the misuse of power, we stand among the Pharisees, who Jesus condemned for neglecting the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. The connections are clear. The law was made to serve humanity, to guide us toward love and justice. To turn away from this call is to let systems of oppression, exclusion, and hypocrisy thrive unchecked. But to answer it, to engage deeply, innovate courageously, and speak boldly, is to fulfill the law in the way Jesus taught and lived. So I ask you, what will you do? Will you sit quietly, as injustice persists, hiding behind the safety of tradition and compliance? Or will you step into the work of transformation, challenging the systems that fail us and breathing life into those that reflect our highest ideals? The choice is yours, but the stakes are high. Jesus' call demands action, not passive agreement. The time to act is now. Engage with the world's brokenness, innovate solutions that uplift and heal, and use your voice to champion justice for those who need it most. If we fail to rise to this challenge, we will find ourselves not on the side of love, but in opposition to it. But if we succeed, we will become the fulfillment of the law's true purpose, agents of justice, bearers of mercy, and reflections of divine love in a world that desperately needs all three.